Hey, today I want to talk about finding the courage to speak up about abuse in the church. And let me just tell you two quick stories that illustrate the problem. The first is when I was talking with the president of one of the most well-known evangelical ministries in the United States. And I had a relationship with him, and we got on the phone, we caught up, and I asked him if he would be willing for his ministry to address some very well documented cases of abuse in his own backyard. And he told me that they wouldn't be doing that. And I was very disappointed. He said it was because they had a policy not to criticize other Christians. And I was so stunned that he could make that remark, I didn't know how to respond. And I've wished I could go back so many times and say, wait a second, your ministry is known for criticizing other Christians. Every single day, you guys criticize a Christian for a dangerous book or their music or whatever. I mean, that's part of your brand, is criticizing Christians that you think are liberal or heretical or dangerous. What do you mean you don't criticize other Christians? But you see, when it came to people within their own networks, even though the documentation of their abuse was quite clear, they weren't going to say anything. On the other hand, when I talk with my skeptical and non-Christian friends about abuse in the church, here's what I've realized. First off, they already know about it. None of it is a surprise to them. They already know that pastors can be greedy, selfish hypocrites. They've read the newspaper. They know about the sex abuse crises. They understand that churches can be like cults and mind control and behavior control, and that people will use religion all the time to take advantage of people. I mean, this is not a surprise to them. What is a surprise to some of them is that a Christian is willing to be so open about the problems in their own religion, because a lot of Christians are very guarded and defensive about their faith and their church and are uncomfortable with anyone criticizing their pastor or what they believe or how they live. And what I found is that being really open about these topics builds trust and creates better conversations with my friends who are atheists or skeptics or just don't care very much about religion at all. So why is it that we have such a hard time as Christians talking about abuse? And this is a very complicated subject, but here's what I found. I found that an entire system has been built that is designed intentionally to keep us from talking about abuse. And what leaders have done is they have identified themes in the Bible that they can leverage to keep everyone else from addressing the problems in the church. So these are all biblical commands that we do need to honor. And they're good things, but the problem is they're being leveraged for bad purposes. So don't slander. Don't gossip. Respect our authority. Don't cause division. Focus on the unity of the church. Forgive and forget. Your trials are a test of your faith. And there's a number of examples here. But the goal is to find a whole pattern of good commands in the Bible and use them to squash any talk about abuse. And that is seriously messed up. And then other layers get added to this. So one of them is designing productions within Sunday services so that everything is polished, and using social media to amplify a picture of the church that's idealized. And so there's no presentation of the church as a place where people struggle or are grieving or are doubting or having problems or conflict. All of that is not part of the picture. And this idealized version of the church makes it harder for us to speak up and say, I don't think everything is going great here. I think we've got some problems. because we've all been sensitized to seeing an idealized version of the church. And the other factor is that if you speak up about abuse, you get labeled. And instead of engaging with the problem of abuse, the response is to attack not the message, because the message is there, but to attack the messenger. And people engage in character assassination and call you a troublemaker or a problem, or there's some issues there, or they're suspicious or cynical. And so character assassination is used to silence a voice crying out for reform. And that's extremely problematic. But the number one issue we've got to address this is because it's in the Bible. I've been doing a very intensive study of the Sermon on the Mount, which is found in Matthew 5 through 7. And as I studied it, I learned that, Matthew 5 starts with blessed are, blessed are, blessed are, blessed are, right? Well, that's meant to be read side by side with Matthew 23, where Jesus says, woe to you, woe to you, woe to you. Do you see the contrast? Blessed, woe, blessed, woe. And the two go together to accentuate and clarify Jesus' message. And what Jesus is doing with these woes, he's saying, look, here's the way of thriving. Here's how I want you to live. And then he's saying, this is what a spiritual catastrophe looks like. And he describes how the people of his day who looked most religiously impressive are whitewashed tombs. They looked awesome on the outside, but they were dead on the inside. And that's a problem, because these people had learned how to use religious dress and religious events and religious language and cunning networking and getting places of honor to appear to be beyond reproach, to look like godly people without actually being godly. That's hypocrisy, and it's offensive to God. God hates it when people use God's words to hurt God's people. Surprise! That's not okay with God. And so Jesus calls them out for their spiritual pride, their greed, their self-indulgence. And he says they totally neglect caring about justice, righteousness, and faithfulness. And so even though they look like an ideal group of religiously devout people, Jesus accurately labels them. And get this, he calls them vipers destined for hell. Vipers, snakes, destined for God's judgment. Because they don't care about justice. They just are looking out for themselves. So I think it's really important that we gain the courage to see through all the ways we have been pressured and conditioned to keep our mouths shut about abuse, and to gain the courage to speak up and say, this is not okay. This is not the work of God. This is opposed to the work of God in the world. To do that is to imitate Christ. It is to hold people accountable for their hypocrisy. It is to love our neighbors who have been hurt and crushed by these systems of abuse in the name of God. It's essential to being a disciple of Jesus. But I know it's hard. It's so much easier to look the other way. It's so inconvenient to speak up over and over and over again. So let me know what you think. Have you found it hard to speak up about abuse? What has helped you find the courage to get involved? How can we build healthier churches? Churches that are vigilant, that are open, that are honest about our struggles, and ultimately that glorify God. Thanks for listening. This is a heavy message, but an important one. I'd love to see you next time.